In a small village nestled near the banks of the great river Omo, there lived a couple, Fatima and Suleiman. The village was known for its lush fields of millet, the sound of drumming that echoed every evening, and the sacred river that both nourished and sustained them. It was a place where everyone knew one another's name, and the old stories of the ancestors were passed down by the elders. For years, Fatima and Suleiman had tried to have a child of their own. They sought the advice of the village's healers, offering sacrifices to the river goddess and praying every night to the spirits of their ancestors. Despite their efforts, no child came. Their hearts were heavy, and they began to worry that perhaps the gods had turned away from them. Then one day, a message came from the village elder, Baba Juma, who was known for his wisdom and connections to the spiritual world. Baba Juma, who had seen many seasons of the river rise and fall, knew the struggles of those who longed for children. He sent word that a child in a nearby village was waiting for a family. The child, a girl named Layla, had been born mute, and the villagers there had believed she was blessed with a special connection to the spirits, one that could not be ignored. Fatima and Suleiman were hesitant at first, but when they went to see Layla, something in the way the little girl smiled at them with her large brown eyes made them feel as if the river itself had called to them. They adopted her and brought her home to their village, where everyone welcomed her as if she had always been part of the family. Layla's life was not easy. Because of her condition, she could not speak or express herself like the other children. She communicated through gestures and a language of her own, and Fatima and Suleiman, though unsure at first, learned to understand her. She brought a quiet joy to their home, and every evening when the sun dipped below the horizon and the river's waters shimmered in the fading light, the family would sit together and Layla would tap the earth with her small fingers as if playing an invisible drum. It became their ritual, the heartbeat of their family. Years passed, and Fatima and Suleiman continued to care for Layla. She learned how to weave baskets with Fatima, how to plant millet with Suleiman, and how to help in the kitchen. The village accepted her as one of their own, and Layla's kindness became well known. She would often sit by the river, waiting for the village children to come play, or she would guide the older women to the fields when they were tired. But then, one day, something changed. Fatima, who had been growing ill from exhaustion, found out she was pregnant. The news was met with both joy and anxiety. Fatima was older now, and the pregnancy was a surprise. Suleiman too felt the weight of this new responsibility, but he was optimistic. The village gathered to celebrate, and for a short while, Layla continued with her daily routine, though there was a subtle shift in the air. When Fatima gave birth to a healthy baby boy, Omar, everything in the household began to change. At first, Layla, as she always did, watched over her new brother with the same care and affection she had for their family. She would touch his tiny hands gently and hum soft tunes to him. But slowly, as the days turned to weeks and then months, Suleiman and Fatima's attention began to focus solely on their newborn. The once lively conversations at the dinner table became quieter, the laughter less frequent. Fatima was often too tired to play with Layla, and Suleiman seemed preoccupied with the new work that had come with their son. The river no longer whispered in Layla's ear. It was as if her role in the family was forgotten. At first, Layla didn't understand. She sat by the door waiting for Fatima to call her inside for their evening chats, but the call never came. She tried to help, offering her hands to hold Omar, but Suleiman would gently push her away, telling her to wait. Days turned into weeks, and Layla's heart, once full of joy, began to feel like the dry ground of a drought. She stopped playing by the river, and her smile, which once lit up the entire village, began to fade. One day, when the village children came to visit, Layla tried to join them in the fields, but the other children, who had once been her playmates, no longer acknowledged her. They played with Omar, running and laughing, while Layla sat quietly on the edge of the field, her fingers tracing patterns in the dirt. It wasn't long before she became ill. Her skin grew pale, and her small body grew weaker. The healer in the village, Amina, saw the change in Layla and came to visit the family. "Your daughter," she said to Fatima and Suleiman, "is not well. Her spirit is crying out. She has been neglected. The river cannot nourish her alone. You must pay attention to her again before it is too late." But Fatima, overwhelmed by caring for Omar, dismissed Amina's words. "Layla is fine," she said. "She will adjust. It's just the changes. She'll come around." Suleiman, though concerned, was caught up in the excitement of their newborn. The days passed and Layla's condition worsened. She no longer laughed, and the once joyful sound of her tapping the earth in rhythm disappeared. One evening, as the sun set over the river, Layla disappeared. No one saw her leave, but when Fatima went to check on her, she found that Layla was gone. The entire village searched for her, walking the banks of the river, calling her name, but there was no sign of her. That night, as the moon rose high above the river, a storm began to gather. The clouds darkened and the wind howled. It was as if the earth itself was mourning. The next morning, the villagers found Layla lying by the river, unconscious and covered in dirt. Her skin was cold, and her body had grown frail from days without food or water. The healer, Amina, was the first to arrive, and with her guidance, they rushed Layla to the village hut. Fatima and Suleiman arrived too late. When they saw Layla, pale and weak, the guilt settled in their hearts like a heavy stone. Layla had given them everything she could, but they had failed to give her the one thing she needed, their love and attention. As Layla slowly recovered, it became clear to Fatima and Suleiman that the river had not abandoned them. It had simply warned them. The river, which had always provided for their village, had now shown them the cost of neglecting the ones they loved. Over the next weeks, Fatima and Suleiman spent every moment with Layla. They taught her new ways to communicate, and they spent hours by the river, listening to its whispers. They realized that Layla, like the river, was a gift, one that could not be taken for granted, and so Layla healed. And though she would never speak a word, her smile returned. The family, now united, would sit by the river every evening, and in the silence of the water's flow, they found a peace they had not known before. As for the river, it continued to flow, nourishing the village, reminding them always that love, like the river, must never run dry.